Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Deborah Thompson, and I am a veterinarian, which is an animal doctor. And today we're going to be talking about Outbreak, One World, One Health. We're going to be talking about something that is so important to talk about today and tomorrow. And that something is One Health. We're going to go through a few different terms today. One Health, species, zoonotic disease. I know it's a long one, but we'll get through it. Mutation and vaccine. First, what is One Health? Simply from this Venn diagram that you can see, it's the connection. It's this bright blue star in the middle of everything. It's the connection between animal health, human health, and environmental health. And keep in mind, environmental health means your surroundings, right? It could be your outside environment where there are trees and water and clean air, or and when it comes to animal health and wildlife health, for instance, that fits right in this area where animals and the environment come together. So One Health, again, is the connection between animal health, human health, and environmental health. And I'm going to be asking you later on, what are the three parts of One Health? Keep in mind, plant health in this example is included in the definition of environmental health for simplicity. Next, we're going to talk about a species. Now, I'm sure you've all heard this word before, but how do you actually explain it? Say if you have a little brother or sister, how would you actually explain a species to them? The way I do it is I just say it's a group of a living thing that is close enough to each other that they can make babies. So for instance, a dog finds another dog and they can make puppies. A cat finds another cat and they can make kittens. But a dog and a cat cannot make babies because they're two different species, right? So in this example up top, how many species, can you raise your hand and tell me how many species do you see in this example? Let's see. Monica, can you tell us how many species do you think in this one example?
One.
Can you say that one more time? I cannot hear you.
One.
One. Well, actually, there's a little bit more than one. In this picture, there's one, so you're correct there. In this, I count at least 4, and I'll explain. So we have humans, that's a species. We got dogs, so that's another. Then we got at least one species of trees, and then at least one species of grass. Okay, now knowing that, how many species, Monica, do you think could be in this picture?
That.
More, right? Yeah. So we got one species, so the dogs, right? At least one species of trees, and at least one species of grass. So we have at least 3 in this example. Good job, thank you. Okay, now when it comes to a zoonotic disease, you might, who here has been to the zoo? Just raise your hand if you've been to a zoo before. Well, in a zoo, yeah, I see some hands raised. In a zoo, you're going to have one species or many species? You're going to have many species, right? And a good way to remember zoonotic disease is that many species is involved, okay? So it's a disease or an illness, a germ that can jump between different species. From animals to people, from people to animals, between animals, it jumps between different species. Now, does anybody have an example of a disease that we could have gotten from an animal? Raise your hand if you can think of one.
The bird flu.
Bird flu, exactly. And we're going to be talking about that later. Thank you very much for that. Any others?
Monica? Coronavirus.
Coronavirus, excellent. I'm very impressed. Any others? Okay, well, you got 2 out of the 3 that I actually have listed here as examples. The novel coronavirus, otherwise known as SARS-CoV-2, rabies, that I'm sure most of you have heard of before, and sometimes the flu virus, and bird flu, swine flu. The flu virus, otherwise known as influenza, that can mutate a lot. It's really interesting scientifically, but also can present as a problem, and we're going to talk about that later. And when I said mutate a lot, what I mean by that is change a lot. Now I want everybody to say with me on the count of 3, mutation is change, okay? 1, 2, 3. Mutation
is change.
So you can see a mutation, it can change behavior, development of something. It can happen in plants, it can happen in animals, can happen in people, can happen in viruses, bacteria, so many things. And oftentimes mutations happen by accident. Now, can anybody identify what's the mutation with this kitten? What's kind of odd? What's the change in this kitten? Here's a hint. Look how many toes this kitten has. So it's more than what's expected. And some people say, oh, that mutation makes it extra cute, right? Some people say, oh, that mutation improves the kitten. And other people say, no, it makes it look ugly. So it, you know, it makes it ugly, so it's not nearly as nice. So a mutation can weaken a virus, for instance. It can strengthen a virus, for instance, or it can just simply change the virus and not affect its strength. Last but not least, we're going to talk about a vaccine. So a vaccine is something that prepares the body to fight a germ. Can anybody explain to me what the immune system is in the body? Has anybody heard about that system, immune system? So the immune system is the part of your body that's made to defend your body, okay? It's your body strength, okay? And it's comprised of a lot of different cells and a bunch of different systems that influence the immune system. But ultimately, it's what makes your body as strong as possible or susceptible to diseases or handling diseases, let's say, and handling germs. So a vaccine is given before somebody or an animal gets sick from a germ. So me as a veterinarian, I give vaccines to my patients, my animal patients, before they encounter that germ, because I want their body to be as strong as possible to fight that germ. And so I do that as a veterinarian, and then human doctors do that for their human patients. An example could be like the flu shot. And notice you give the flu shot at the start of the flu season because a vaccine's not going to be super useful after you already get that germ. Does that make sense? So a vaccine's given before a germ comes to you or an animal. And then medication is given to treat. Medication is given after somebody is already sick. but a vaccine is meant to make your body as strong as possible to fight that germ. So I'll be asking you about that a little bit later on. So remember that part. A vaccine's given before somebody or an animal sees a germ. Okay, who can tell me the 3 parts of One Health?
Monica? Human health.
Yeah, human health, and there are 2 others.
Abraham?
Animal health.
Perfect. So I heard human health, animal health, and environmental health. That's on the screen right now. Good job, guys. Thank you so much. So One Health, exactly. Animal health, human health, environmental health. In this example on the screen, it's just a beautiful forest. You know, everything's spread out so nicely. There's clean water, there's clean air. All the birds and the bats are happy and they're not competing for anything. The foxes and the mice are in a good population distribution. Everybody is doing well. And then something changes. What changes?
Monica? Human beings are coming.
Yeah, human beings are coming. And they're removing some trees because these people need to use the trees, you know, to build houses and to have fire. So it makes sense, but they're not replacing these forests, or maybe they're cutting down the trees in too fast of a way. So where are these animals going? The animals that used to live over here, where are they moving? So they're moving to the smaller forest. And what happens when there are, say, a lot of people in one room? It can get stressful. Just like a lot of animals in a smaller space, it can get stressful. And when you're competing more for food and for shelter, that's really stressful. And when you're stressed, you can show more signs of illness. Sometimes, you know, animals, just like for people, we can carry our own germs, but it doesn't bother us. But if that germ jumps to another species, like what can happen here, that can be a big problem for that other species. Check this out. When there are even more people, where are these animals going? Can anybody tell me what they see on the screen? Where are these animals moving? They don't really have many options, right? They can go into the forest that's shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, or they're being forced out to look in dumpsters, right? In streets, in cities, and they just have no other choice. They want to survive. Isn't that what you would do if you were an animal? I know I would do that. So, but the problem again is zoonotic diseases. Who can tell me how do you define zoonotic disease? What is that? Remember that example of the picture of the people with all these animals around and then the arrows? Zoonotic disease could be like the novel coronavirus, could be like rabies, could be like flu. So a zoonotic disease is a disease that can jump between different species. And you can see these animals are either forced into a small environment or they're being forced out of that environment and they're getting closer to people. And certainly with more stress and more signs of illness and increased chance of what we call transmission or spread of a germ, you can have more problems in people. So this really gets to the heart of One Health. We have environmental health, animal health, and human health. Let's say, for instance, that because of climate change or another destruction of the environment somehow, there is a problem with one bird, and then there's a problem with multiple. And I'm going to try to mute somebody because I'm getting feedback. Okay. Okay. So say if all of the birds just disappear, they either go extinct or they go to another forest, all of the birds of any kind, all of the birds are wiped out. There are going to be 5 changes that you see because these birds are gone. Can you tell me what you see as a change? Raise your hand if you see any difference, oops, between this and this.
Monica? You're on mute.
Can you unmute yourself, Monica? You're still muted.
Abraham, do you want to help out?
There are less trees.
Less trees, exactly. Why do you think there are less trees when you have less birds? Think about what birds eat.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
It's totally fine. So can eat seeds, right? They can eat fruits. And then that's important for seed dispersal, right? For seed spread in the environment. Monica, was there something you wanted to add? So again, just comparing, oops, this slide to this slide. Think about what owls and hawks and eagles eat. What do they feed on? That's in this picture. They feed on some mice, right? And when the birds are gone, why would the mouse population go up? Monica, feel free to unmute yourself. You're still muted, I'm sorry. Okay, we can hear you.
The birds that would feed on them are not there.
Perfect. Yeah, so the birds feed on the mice, and when the birds are gone, the mouse population goes up. What else in this picture feeds on the mice that the population goes up? Do you see anything else, Monica, there? That's found right near the mice? Like these foxes, right? So when the birds are gone, the mouse population increases, and then there's more food for these foxes. But then check this out. Is this a problem? So many animals that are not meant to be near people, really near people? Is that a problem? Yeah, it's a problem, but why is it a problem? Think about, what is a zoonotic disease? Monica, do you have an idea?
Sorry, I beg your pardon.
Oh, I said, With so many new animals near people, is that a problem for disease transmission or disease spread?
Yes.
Yeah, it is. And keep in mind, animals can give us germs, we can give animals germs. So it goes both ways. Thank you for that. So we got all 5 of the changes. So good job, team. That's great. Now, why is this related to coronavirus, the novel coronavirus SARS-CoV-2? It's pretty much how we treat the environment, right? It all comes down to how we treat the environment. Because with a suffering environment, the animals are stressed out. They're competing more. They live closer to other animals that they really don't belong near, and they live closer to people. Just like for us, animals can carry some germs that don't make them sick, but once it hops to another species, it can make that other species sick. So that's not ideal. And then people are taking up the space where animals were once living. It's as simple as that. I mean, it's one planet. So we need to learn how to share appropriately, or else we're going to have some major consequences. So when it comes to people getting closer to animals, you know, it can happen in the forest when we go hunting. It can happen in live animal markets, you know, those really big markets where there are animals who are still alive, meant for human consumption. And the reason why that's a major concern is because there are a lot of different species on top of each other in cages. And when one species pees or poops or does anything like that, and it falls onto another species, the risk of that disease or that germ being shared between different species and causing illness increases. There's a lot of risk there. And then think of, in those markets, there are very busy markets with people. People are everywhere. So it's just an opportunity for a virus to spread really quickly. Now, I totally understand. When it comes to people who need to eat wild animals for their meat to survive, I get it. You have to find protein somewhere, right? But the key is the education part. We need to make sure that as many people as possible understand the risks that are involved, because some germs are zoonotic, right? Some germs do spread between different species. Not all, but a lot. And some viruses can mutate. And remember what we said earlier, mutation means change. A mutation of a virus can strengthen the virus, it can weaken the virus, or it can just simply change the virus and not cause it to be a big deal. Another reason why some people eat wild animals is simply because it's a delicacy. They want to be fancy, and it's a rare finding in that area of the world. So that's why they decide to eat those animals. But again, it comes down to education and seeing, are there any other options for a protein source? Is there something safer to eat that is better for the planet, you know? So something to think about. Again, mutations can happen by accident and in pretty much anything: people, animals, plants, viruses, and more. And when it comes to this virus, the novel coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2, it's considered to be zoonotic, jumping between different species, and it can mutate. But fortunately, it cannot mutate as fast as the influenza or the flu virus. And Abraham mentioned earlier the bird flu. So right now we're going to be acting like scientists, and we're going to be working with models, okay? And when it comes to models, we are trying to predict the future. We're trying to see what happens and have it emulate something that happens in nature, something that we can't see with our own naked eye, but we know happens. So we work with models, and we're going to first demonstrate a mutation or a change with a sentence. Okay, so I need a volunteer, and perhaps I'll ask Vanessa to go first. Who will not mutate the sentence? And here's the challenge. So Vanessa will go first, and she's going to say one sentence 5 times fast. Here's the sentence.
A black bug bit a big black bear. 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 A black bug hit a big black bear.
Holy cow, that was really good. I did not count any mutations. Monica, can you do it? And try to do it faster than Vanessa?
A black bird bit a big black bear. 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 A black bird bit a big black bear.
Great job. Great job. I heard maybe 3 mutations. But well done. If I were to do it, it'd be like 1,000 mutations. Honestly, I'm terrible at this, but great job. And thanks for doing this. In a nutshell, when it comes to this mutation or change, right? This example demonstrates something called a point mutation. And a point mutation is something like, for instance, if I said a back blug bit a blig back blare, okay? So what I did was I removed this L, put in an L here, put in an L here. You know, I was just adding different letters that really don't belong there into this sentence. But I'm doing it by accident. It's all by mistake. I don't mean to do it. It's just, you know, how my brain goes. And the same thing happens when DNA and RNA are read inside the body, inside cells by very small like machinery that's inside the cell to allow for cells to replicate and to multiply. So that's one example using a model of how a mutation can happen. Here's another model, and we're going to be talking about translation. So when mRNA, messenger RNA, is translated into a protein. So there's this piece of machinery that's going along the messenger RNA, and it reads something on the RNA strand, but then it translates, it like makes a protein that's totally wrong. How is this possible? Well, let's use a model to figure this out. Okay, and Vanessa, if you could be the first guinea pig, as we say. So Vanessa will say one of these 2 words. And if she says hi, and we think that she says hi because she's going to be on mute, we go like this, okay? If we think she says I, we're going to go like this. She's going to say it silently 3 times, and then she will say exactly what she said out loud so that we can hear her. Let's see if your message to us will translate appropriately. Go for it. I'm guessing this. I have no idea. Anybody else want to guess? Monica, Abraham, Adesoji? I'm guessing I. Okay, what was it?
It was I.
Very good. Okay. Anybody else want to go for a second example? So the next volunteer will have either heart or art. Okay, Monica, go for it. No idea. What was it in the end? Unmute yourself, please. Was it art? Was Vanessa right or was I right?
Vanessa.
Oh no! I lost twice. Oh, that's terrible. Okay, well let's stop that example since I just lost twice. And now we're going to all guess. If you can all unmute yourself. we're going to try to predict when a mutation happens. So this virus is going to replicate into 2 different viruses, okay? We can already see the first one, that's red, but we're gonna see, is there a mutation that happens? Is this second virus that will show up here going to be red, blue, or purple? So we're going to say on the count of 3 what color we think this second virus will be, okay? And Abraham and Edasoji, if you could unmute yourself, that'd be great. Okay, on the count of 3, red, blue, or purple. 1, 2, 3. Purple.
Purple.
Okay, let's see. Oh, I lost again. Okay. Another time. Red, blue, or purple? Okay. 1, 2, 3. Red.
Oh,
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I can't take this anymore. Okay, it's purple. Okay. One more time. Red, blue, or purple? 1, 2, 3. Blue.
Blue.
Nice. I got 1. I got 1. So mutations are really hard to predict. Okay. What scientists do is they look at trends. When it comes to the influenza virus or the flu virus, the reason why they need to make a new vaccine each year is because there are so many mutations in that virus that they need to know, they need to predict with models. They need to predict when and where a certain type of flu virus is coming to a community. And that way they can plan accordingly and create appropriate vaccines to protect people. And keep in mind, it's really hard sometimes, but the best way to go about it is to look for trends at this time in 2020. Okay, and the last example of a mutation is something that I personally find is super cool, and it's called genetic reassurance. Pretty much what it is that one, in this case, a virus. So one virus, red virus, joins another virus, a blue virus, in something about the brand new virus. That something could be a pig, so like swine flu, can happen with bird flu, and with other species. So some people say that when it comes to bats, you know, this coronavirus that I hear so much about, it came from a bat, so let's just get rid of all the bats and that solves the problem. That would actually make the problem much worse. Bats are incredibly important. Does anybody know why bats are important?
Monica?
they help in pollination.
Pollination, exactly. Pollination, I mean, look how much pollen is on this cute bat's face. It's eating its fruit or, you know, having sap or whatever it's eating, but it's just completely covered in pollen. And then this bat goes to another plant and pollinates the other plant. And that's how you can keep the forest alive, right? It's these pollinators. And check this out. This bat is eating a bug, an insect. It can eat mosquitoes too. Can anybody give me an example of what can be carried by a mosquito? What disease can be carried by a mosquito? That affects people too.
Monica?
Malaria.
Malaria, exactly. Huge problem. So malaria, Zika is another. I mean, there are so many examples. But in a nutshell, when it comes to bats, they are super important. There are some types of bats even, they're called keystone species. And that means that when bats are gone from an ecosystem, from their particular habitat, their area, the entire ecosystem collapses. So remember that picture when the birds left and there were 5 changes? Well, for some bats, if that bat leaves, or you know, that population of bats leave, then the entire screen will go white. Everything gets wiped out. Not fun. Maybe there'd be a few people hanging around, but really nothing much. So bats are super, super important. So going back to how 2 viruses can mutate to 1, we're going to do another word competition. Yay! We're going to work with another model. Here's an example first, just to make sure everybody understands. It's going to be just a once upon a time example with a sentence. So what you're going to see is that I'm going to be filling in these, filling in these blanks with a red sentence. Once upon a time, there was an extremely happy rabbit that loved to eat carrots and bananas. And that represents the red virus. Now there's going to be a blue sentence. Once upon a time, there was an extremely sneaky lion that roared to scare friends and neighbors. 2 very simple sentences. But what happens when we mix and match different parts from different sentences? Let's see what the message actually is like. So with this purple sentence, it goes something like this. Once upon a time, there was an extremely happy lion that loved to scare carrots and neighbors. Okay. Or, once upon a time, there was an extremely sneaky rabbit that roared to eat friends and bananas. So a question for you, give me a thumbs up if you think that these mutations strengthened a sentence. Do you think the message got stronger with this? Thumbs up if you think so. How about this? Thumbs up if you think it made the message weaker. Yeah, I think this mutation just made things very strange and definitely did not help with the messaging of the sentence. So what we're going to do now, if we can all get on the chat box, we're going to fill in the blank, and then eventually we're going to mix and match between different sentences. So what I will do is I will write, once upon a time there was and then I'll fill in with capital letters a new word, and I invite all of you to do the same. Right now, I see 2 sentences up. We're waiting for a few more. In the meantime, I will read those sentences. Once upon a time, there was a cat that met the dog for lunch. Okay. Another one was, once upon a time, there was an old man that scared the children for laughs. Oh, that sounds so mean. Anybody else want to contribute? Great, Abraham, that's wonderful. Once upon a time, there was a tiger that the men for fun. Okay, very good. So while Monica and Edo Soji are writing their sentences, I'll combine Abraham's and Vanessa's sentences for fun. So it will go something like this. Oh yeah, no worries. So it'll go like this. Once upon a time, there was an old man that ate the children for fun. Oh man, that's terrible. So I just combined the 2 sentences from Abraham and Vanessa. Monica, would you be up for combining 2 of the 3 sentences you see on the screen? I think you're muted right now. Okay,
I don't.
perfect. Hello.
I don't. I beg your pardon.
No worries. No worries. Vanessa, do you want to try?
Sure. Once upon a time, there was an old man that met the dog for fun.
See, I feel like that strengthened a sentence or a message versus what I was talking about, an old man eating children. So, you know, this is just an example of how mutations can change. It can strengthen a virus sentence, weaken a virus or sentence, or it can just simply change it. So let's talk about for a little bit the anatomy or the structure of a virus, because it can help you understand a little bit more behind what scientists are working on so that they can design the right type of vaccine. So there's the shell and the core, okay? Viruses are structured really simply, which is quite nice. So in a normal red virus, there's a normal red core and a red shell, but there could also be mutations. And for this blue core, it's enveloped by this red shell. Same thing goes with other viruses, okay? When it comes to this virus and this virus, they're considered to be quote unquote normal. But the very bottom and the very top virus are considered to be mutations. Now, something that's important to know is that when it comes to that shell and that core, there are roles that the shell plays. Particularly, the shell is responsible for getting inside of a cell. So it determines the amount of infectivity, like the infectious nature of the virus to get inside of a cell. So that's the outside. Now, once the virus gets inside of a cell because of its shell, then it needs to replicate, it needs to multiply. Because if a single virus goes into a cell and does nothing, then it's not going to change anything in the body. But if it replicates a ton, if it multiplies a ton and makes so many copies of itself, then that's a big problem, right? So you could see here that, you know, depending on what mutates, either the outside shell or the inside core, there's going to be a change to how worrisome the virus is. Now, let's talk about the virus today, the virus that's causing COVID-19. There are several things that we can do to protect ourselves, including covering our mouths with masks, and make sure you cover your nose. That's very, very important. We can wash our hands for at least 20 seconds with soap and water. Cover your cough and sneeze with your elbow. Make sure after you do that, don't cross your hands, because then that'll just contaminate your other hand, and then you'll have to wash all over again. If you use a tissue, throw it out in a trash can that's lined, and then wash your hands for 20 seconds at least. The only time to the only time to touch your nose, eyes, or mouth is when you have clean hands. Call the doctor when you're sick. Make sure your environment is nice and clean, and keep your distance from people other than your immediate family until you're told to do otherwise, unless you're sick. And if that's the case, try to stay away from your family members, including your pets, as much as possible until told otherwise by a doctor. So right now we're going to go and watch this Mythbusters video from the Discovery Channel. This demonstrates using color dye or food coloring, how far a sneeze can travel, and different techniques to cover your sneeze.
That's one. Yeah. Oh, there's another one coming. For each style, they're going to unleash a sample of 3 sneezes. Oh, it looks horrible, doesn't it? I look like a vampire. Ah! Adam's face is a picture, but it's the canvas that tells the real story. I see spots up to 8 feet away, dude.
Yeah, it did spread quite a lot, but there's a lot of markings here. So I'd say single hand, not so good.
Yeah, not so good. Not so good, and then some. Even with his hand directly in front of the oncoming sneeze, Adam can't begin to contain the explosion. Now, I'm pretty clear sneezing into your hand is meant as a courtesy to those around you to keep from spreading your germs onto them. And as far as I can see, it's quite effective at doing exactly the opposite. I noticed there's almost no red dye on me at all, and crap loads all around me. If I was on a subway, I'm typhoid Mary. With the hand getting the thumbs down, can the elbow do any better? To find out, it's over to Jamie, and he'll be sneezing in green. Now, we wait for the sneeze to take effect on Jamie's Who's your nose? Slowly it irritates the cilia inside. And with the cilia salivating, three sneezes later, and the results are very impressive. Put some wood on your shoe and let's look at your elbow hair. That's totally localized to you, man.
And you know what? It's all on my arm and not on my hand, so I'm not as likely to spread it around.
Yeah, it's doubly effective. Hands down, the elbow is a highly effective technique with virtually the entire sneeze contained on each of Jamie's sneezes. But can the humble hanky do better still? Well, it's back to Adam, and for this final test, he's sneezing in fluid. How do we do? I see a tiny dot of blue there. At first, it seems like the hanky may be victorious, until I see some on the hanky.
And look, it's penetrated all the way to both sides.
It's penetrated both sides, and perhaps most damningly, it's on my hands, ready to spread to the next person whose hand I shake. The sneeze seeped through the hanky, contaminating Adam's hand, making it a pretty poor technique. And it gets worse. Let me make one more thing clear about this hanky I'm holding here. Imagine, achoo, you sneeze in it all day long. You keep on putting it in your pocket, pulling it back out, giving people change from your pocket, handing them your pen, handing them your phone, talking on your phone, spreading germs. Yeah, it's not just a Rorschach test, it's a petri dish.
Okay. So anything there that surprised you, or did you learn anything from that? It's really interesting to see how far a sneeze can travel, huh? So we already learned how we can protect ourselves today, where this virus likely came from, how can we protect ourselves in the future? And fortunately, there are scientists from so many different professions working together right now to try to create a vaccine. And keep in mind, a vaccine is important to strengthen the body to fight an upcoming germ. Scientists means, physicians, human doctors, veterinarians, and other researchers, people who study the immune system, people who study viruses. We're all working together to try to create a vaccine for people around the world. It's important to stay away from wild animals, or it's just simply animals that are not meant to be near people in high densities, right? And the other thing is, it's time to start rebuilding the forest, because ultimately, remember that example when all those birds disappeared? Well, why did these birds disappear, right? It's how we treat the environment. If you want to play some games, online games, or if you want to share this this website with your little sister or brother, you're welcome to. It's out of Public Health England, and it comes in so many different languages. It's e-bug.eu. And I just wanted to thank you all for your time and attention and participation. I had a lot of fun, and I hope you did too.